We shall now proceed to the last order of the day, which is the first reading debate on the relocation of the seat of Parliament Bill. Honorable members, before I call the Honorable Malema, I would like to explain the rules relevant for the first reading debate. In terms of Rule 285, Sub-Rule 3, the person in charge of the debate is allocated 15 minutes to make an introductory speech and then also to reply to the debate. The rules stipulate that there is no speakers list and members are permitted to speak for no longer than 3 minutes upon being recognized by the presiding officer. The 15 minutes allocated to the Honorable Malema is thus inclusive of the introductory speech and the reply to the debate. I now want to recognize the Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much, House Chair. We take this opportunity to acknowledge the leadership of the economic freedom fighters and ground forces of the now 10 years old economic emancipation movement. We also acknowledge the leadership of the opposition parties in Parliament and all members of Parliament. We took the opportunity provided to sponsor a discussion in the National Assembly, guided by the founding manifesto adopted by the Economic Freedom Fighters National Assembly on what is to be done. Held on the 26th of July 2013, 10 years ago, to formally introduce the relocation of the seat of Parliament bill, a private member bill where we are sponsoring. There are both political and practical reasons why this bill is important, and we'll deal with both of them. But also, there are financial implications which the EFF Treasurer General Committee will deal with. The EFF founding manifesto calls for the one city, Tshwane, as the administrative and legislative capital of South Africa. Politically, the decision to have the legislative capital in the city of Cape Town, while the administrative capital is in Tshwane, is as a result of the Anglo-Boer War Vereeniging Peace Agreement between the Boers and the British, signed in 1902. This agreement brought an end to the Anglo-Boer War. Later on, when the Union of South Africa was formed after the 1907 colonial conference held in London, there was an agreement that the Cape Town become the seat of Parliament, while Pretoria, now Tshwane, become the administrative capital, and Bloemfontein the judicial capital. Africans were not represented because we were treated as less than human beings with no right to self-determination. Today, we do not have a reason to continue upholding this colonial and racial pact that the Liberation Party has imposed on our people. This is the same party that continues to impose the stamp in the national anthem on all of us. The same way they continue to impose on us Paul Kruger at Church Square in Tshwane, the statue of Louis Botha here outside Parliament, and the colonial imperialist racist Victoria behind the National Council of Provinces chambers. The ANC continues to uphold and defend the colonial and apartheid racist pact that was made and never envisaged that one day we will attain political freedom to self-determine as people in charge of their own destiny, including deciding on the seat of Parliament and administrative arms of the state. The ANC continues to uphold and protect the colonial and racist economic pact to exploit and exclude Africans from participating in the economy as anything more than cheap labor. This and many other colonial and racist apartheid pacts and agreements continue to maintain and uphold the political and economic structure that benefits just under 5 million people out of the total population of more than an estimated 60 million. All those who continue to benefit from the colonial and racist apartheid pacts protected by the Liberation Party are the ones who will object to the bill that seeks to address the senseless and irrational arrangement in democratic South Africa. House Chair, over and above the need to address the political question, the need to take a decision ourselves that we can proudly claim as our own, and a decisive break with the past to continue to insist that we retain Parliament here in Cape Town has a serious democratic and political consequences. The National Assembly and National Council of Provinces are elected by the people to represent the people. We are elected to provide national forum for public consideration of issues that affect all our people. Section 59 of the Constitution demands that the National Assembly facilitate public involvement in the legislative and other processes of the Assembly and its committees. The reality and experience of past post-apartheid South Africa for many of our people is that Parliament is nothing but an institution that forms part and parcel of elitist and inaccessible institution, both politically and practically. They cannot access this place. They cannot afford to travel to Cape Town to participate in any of the Assembly, Council, or committee meetings. East London is more than 1,000 kilometers from Cape Town. Gqeberha is more than 700 kilometers from Cape Town. Bloemfontein is more than 1,000 kilometers from Cape Town. Kimberley is more than 950 kilometers from Cape Town. Tshwane is more than 1,400 kilometers from Cape Town. Polokwane is more than 1,709 kilometers from Cape Town. Nelson to Cape Town is more than 1,700 kilometers away. Durban to Cape Town is approximately 1,600 kilometers. Rustenburg is more than 1,400 kilometers away from Cape Town. These are the major towns of the three provinces, Eastern Cape, Free State, and Northern Cape, that borders Western Cape, and still many of our people in these places cannot afford to travel to participate in any of the Assembly, Council, or committee meetings. Those in Gauteng, Limpopo, Northwest, Free State, KwaZulu-Natal, and Mpumalanga are even in far worse situation. We do not have affordable and safe public transport for many of our people to travel this long distance. Parliament has so far been a playground for associations representing the private sector, unions out of touch with the reality, and NGOs funded by George Soros and the Oppenheimers, while our people are excluded. We continue to receive submissions, particularly oral submissions from the same individuals. The voice of our people is marginalized in part due to location of this institution. This is why we must relocate the seat of Parliament to Tshwane in Gauteng province. It is bordered by Limpopo to the north, Mpumalanga to the east, Free State to the south, and Northwest to the west. Many of our people in the Northern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal can travel more easily to Gauteng compared to traveling to Cape Town. This private member bill to relocate the seat of Parliament is an act to make this Parliament the Parliament of many of our people. Our people must come to Parliament to participate and become part of holding the executive accountable, and must become part of the lawmaking. The majority of political parties here will agree that indeed we do not make the laws with our people, but make the laws or don't make laws for them. Majority of political parties, by the way, their head office is in Gauteng. It is this assembly that rejected to pass a private member bill introduced by the EFF to make clinics open 24 hours every day, a bill that will give our people life. This is while the city of Cape Town has more than 90 clinics that provide dependable and reliable primary health care services. It is this very Parliament that refused to amend the Constitution to allow for expropriation of land without compensation for equal redistribution in use, a legislation that will break our past with colonialism and apartheid. That debate on beneficiation of our minerals will never be relevant for as long as the land is not owned by the people of South Africa. Our people must come to Parliament to engage as we hold the executive accountable. they will know that members of the ANC abuse their majority to prevent Parliament from investigating corruption at Eskom when there is evidence by one of the most senior officials, a former CEO, that senior officials, including members of cabinet, are stealing money at Eskom, subjecting all of us to preventable and avoidable electricity blackouts. Our people must know that Parliament was told by an independent panel chaired by former Chief Justice Sandile Ngobo that there is a prima facie evidence that Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa failed to report the theft of his farm, the theft on his farm to any police official as required by law. The independent panel report found that Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa may have committed a serious violation of Section 34, subsection 1 of the Prevention and Combating of Corruption Activities Act. Even with this evidence, the ANC once more abuses its majority and rejected any attempt to hold the president accountable. Our people must come to Parliament and witness this madness. We will relocate Parliament to Tshwane in our lifetime. The time has come, and there is nothing anyone can do about it. Whether someone likes it or not, the apartheid pact, the colonial pact, shall be broken by this generation. Whether you agree with it today or tomorrow, our generation will relocate this Parliament to Tshwane and make sure that majority of our people have access to this Parliament. The administration and legislature must be put in one place to make the accountability of the executive more easier and to make the legislators to hold the executive accountable more easier. I thank you, the House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, I will now recognize political parties in terms of the same sequence that we're using for declarations of vote. The opportunity to do so. The time allocation as stated, 3 minutes, will apply to all parties. The DA.
Thank you, Chairperson, and please allow me to keep my camera off due to connectivity problems. Chairperson, this is the wrong debate at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. The relocation of Parliament isn't something that can or should be done based only on party political or ideological considerations. And any such consideration should be based on comprehensive and current studies. This is not an exercise for thumb-sucking. One of the motivations given in the bill is that a relocation will lead to financial savings. The argument is that the travel expenses would be less as everyone would be located in Tshwane. The reality is that members come from all over the country and therefore require traveling. So there will not be no financial implication. Besides that, relocation will require not only the construction of a new parliamentary precinct, but residential accommodation for members as well. Another argument raised is that it will require less traveling by the cabinet ministers and their staff. Now, the easy remedy for this is not to relocate everything to Tshwane, but rather cut the cabinet size, work more efficiently, and make use of technology. Now, besides the assumed financial benefit of relocation, this must also be measured against the consequential economic impact on current parliamentary staff. What will happen to all the staff members working at Parliament? What of their families? Will they also have to relocate or just be put out of work? What about all the skills and expertise and experience acquired over many decades? Will this just go to waste? But Chair, the main concern with this bill is that it is not based on current and relevant costing and future projections, building in escalating costs and a worsening economy. The last impact study was done in 2018 and cannot be used as the benchmark for costing the relocation. The figures used in motivation of the bill does not make sense and is a total underestimate in the financial situation in 2023. The bill is based on the assumption that Parliament will relocate to Tshwane and that a new Parliament will be built there. However, it does not have an existing building. It burned down in 2022. And it is totally naive to think that the existing building can be left just as it is. The reality is that as a national heritage site, it has to be rebuilt and restored. So relocating Parliament will thus mean that 2 parliaments will be built and at double the costs. This makes no financial sense and something the taxpayers cannot and will not afford. The country is in a desperate economic state. Costs are rising, unemployment is rising, infrastructure is falling apart. We have no power and the government is doing everything it can to wreck our economic future. Relocating Parliament is not what the country needs now. We should focus on helping people to survive, helping people to improve their lives. And again, Chair, this is the wrong debate at the wrong time for totally the wrong reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The EFF. Is there a member from the EFF who want to make a declaration?
No, thanks, House Chair. It was supposed to be the Treasurer General, but we can quickly make some few reflections in terms of what happens. The emphasis that the bill places is the simple fact that you cannot have the administrative and legislative capitals, particularly an administrative capital, which is supposed to perpetually and consistently account to Parliament. It becomes easier if you've got a Parliament and the legislative staff in one area. Almost all institutions, the institutions that report to Parliament, they are upward of 250. The entities that are attached to the different departments in national government. And almost all of them have to be spending a lot of resources to be traveling to Cape Town to give accountability. And that is not a sustainable model. And the Commander-in-Chief makes a solid and sound argument that as compared to Cape Town, Tshwane is much more accessible. Members of Parliament, those who want to make submissions, civil society, can travel from the Northwest, from Mpumalanga, from Limpopo, from KwaZulu-Natal, from Northern Cape, from Free State, go and make submissions in Parliament and go back home the same day. But you cannot do that in relation to Cape Town currently. So what ends up happening is a Parliament that is secluded from the people. That is why majority of submissions that come into National Assembly, they come from handled civil society organizations, which have got direct or indirect link with the Oppenheimers or the George Soros foundations, the so-called open societies. So the relocation of Parliament to a central space geographically is to make it much more accessible, is to make it much more democratic. So if anything, this bill is about the intensification of democracy, where democracy is not just limited to periodic elections, but meaningful participation by our people who can gain access to Parliament. Because we have tried before, even with these virtual platforms for submissions, it has never been meaningful for most of our people. It becomes meaningful when they come physically to interact with members of Parliament, make their representation in terms of the issues that they deal with. So that is basically the essence of what the bill is introduced to achieve, that let us make this institution a much more accessible and democratic institution for the people of South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The IFP.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson, whilst it is desirable that the administration and Parliament should be in the same area, let me remind us, those of us that have been around for some time, that the relocation of Parliament is a matter that has been under discussion for a number of years already. In fact, during the fourth Parliament, we spoke about it when we realized that the facilities that are provided at the current Parliament were not adequate to meet our needs. And some members of the House will recall that we even considered expanding our facilities across the road from where the current Parliament is into what is known as the New Meester parking lot. However, Honourable Chairperson, I think that we have been really overtaken by events of what tragically happened in January 2022. And wittingly or unwittingly, however that fire was caused and whoever is responsible, it for now and the medium term short to medium, puts paid, we believe, to any debate on the relocation of Parliament. And I say so, Honourable Chairperson, because as the Honourable previous speaker had indicated from the DA, we find that in terms of the South African Heritage Resources Act, Parliament is now obliged to reconstruct and refurbish the burned down building. And from what we have seen so far, that's going to cost anywhere between 2 and 3 billion rand. Now, that is money that has to be spent. That is taxpayers' money that has to be spent. So, you know, when we look at the figures for a relocation, it runs into almost 13 to 14 billion. It is quite clear, Honourable Chairperson, that we can ill afford to spend state resources in that kind of manner. And if we base our consideration of the relocation of the seat of Parliament on a cost-benefit analysis, and in consideration that we are compelled to rebuild the current buildings, the facts make it irrevocably clear that we simply cannot afford to relocate at this time. Whilst the fire at Parliament was caused by an action that should have been avoided, there are millions of South Africans that wallow in poverty, in hunger. They still face the effects of the floods that took place KZN. We know that schools, there are many schools still without sanitation facilities. People are still on waiting lists for housing. And there are just so many other social needs that we need to look to. We know what the employment figures are like, and you know, these are things that we need to seriously address. So I feel that it is a wrong time, and unfortunately not because you know, the EFF should not have brought this bill, but the events of January 2022 make this a very difficult matter for us to consider and move forward and look at relocation. And we just believe that money could be well spent on social needs, and we understand the political ramifications and what has happened from 1860 or 1652 to now. But I think we should really consider the economy of the country, where we find ourselves, and that we could better spend the money in the interest of our people and attending to their needs. Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The FF Plus.
Dankie, Voorsitter. Chair, I want to say that for the Freedom Front Plus, it's all about cost. What will it really cost the taxpayer in the end of the day? I do not accept the figures given in the bill. In fact, besides that 4.4 refers to 7 million, I presume it's a mistake. It should be 7 billion, but it is not the correct costs. And the reason I say that, Chairperson, is that the relocation and the whole relocation of civil servants, I do not see in these costs. Die Vryheidsfront Plus is baie duidelik daaromtrent. En ek gaan nou nie weer herhaal wat die vorige sprekers gesê het, die koste wat in elk geval moet aangegaan word vir die herstel van die bestaande parlement nie. So dit moet daar wees. Maar agbare Voorsitter, die argument word altyd gesê dat ministers moet op en afvlieg en dat parlementslede moet op en afvlieg. Of die parlement nou in Tshwane is of nie, die feit van die saak is, daar's parlementslede wat in ander provinsies bly, ook in die Wes-Kaap. En dan sal hulle in elk geval Pretoria toe moet vlieg om dan die parlementssittings te kan bywoon. So dit is nie 'n geldige argument nie. Jy gaan altyd, maak nie saak waar dit geleë is nie, parlementslede hê wat sal moet rondvlieg om by die parlement uit te kom. Maar wat nie in ag geneem word nie, is die feit dat die parlement het ongeveer 1300 werknemers alleen. As jy die kantore vat in die parlement en die amptenare wat daar sou bly en werk en in Kaapstad bly, dan wil ek vir u sê, praat ons hier van ongeveer 2000 werknemers. As die parlement sou skuif, sal daardie werknemers hulle gesinne moet skuif. Hulle sal nuwe kostes moet aangaan vir wonings, vir skole. En ek kan nie verstaan nie, daar word baie hoog altyd opgegee deur die EFF dat hulle in belang van die werknemers optree. Maar dit word nie bereken hier nie. dit gaan baie meer kos. En wat die amptenare betref om komitees by te woon, kan ons 'n gemengde stelsel daarstel of 'n hibride wat hulle dan na verwys om te sê hulle kan nog steeds die komitees bywoon. Ons sal dit nie ondersteun nie. Dankie, voorsitter.
Thank you. The ACDP. Is there a speaker from the ACDP? The UDM? The ATM? Good. The NFP? The AIC? COPE? PAC? Al-Jama? And the ANC?
Thank you, House Chair and fellow members of Parliament in the National Assembly. We are meeting for the first reading debate on the relocation of the seat of Parliament bill by the EFF. Within the limited declaration time, we'll examine some of the reasons given in the bill to determine whether it is worthy or not. As a start, it's important to locate this debate in the history of our country and its difficult struggle for freedom, history and facts about the relocation matter in Parliament, regular assessment of balance of social, political, economic forces in our country, Southern African region, our continent and the world. Not what we fancy imagine as reality, not the usual anti-majoritarianism, rhetoric, populist slogans and insults against the ANC and other parties which hold different political views. The following issues should be taken into consideration as part of this debate. After the COVID-19 pandemic and the terrible January 2022 fire, which mainly affected the National Assembly, Parliament is compelled by the heritage laws to restore all its damaged buildings. That is why 2 billion was allocated by the National Treasury for the restoration of all damaged buildings. In this difficult economic climate, it will be highly irresponsible to spend money to restore damaged parliamentary buildings and thereafter abandon them and move to Gauteng because of dislike of the Western Cape province, as if the residents of the province are not part of one united South Africa. Majority of the staff members of Parliament are from and or are based in Cape Town and are required to move even with their families to Tshwane. They have not been consulted and their views heard. The views of the people of other 8 provinces, particularly Gauteng, where I come from, will also have to be heard on this matter. Members of Parliament who are from outside Gauteng will all still have to travel to Tshwane and be accommodated in rented places or at a new parliamentary village which may have to be built. What is going to happen to the publicly owned parliamentary villages which have been renovated and are currently still being renovated? What is going to happen to publicly owned ministerial houses in Cape Town? Currently, the hybrid model of working, which mainly require investment in network upgrade, IT gadgets and data, is the way to work for many workplaces now and in the future. This cuts a lot of traveling and accommodation by public servants, invited guests and committee members who are supposed to participate in parliamentary meetings and sittings. We are of the firm view that reasons given in the bill are not adequate and worthy. Faced with other important social and economic priorities for the country, this bill is not a priority for the country. We therefore do not and will not support this bill. We'll go into detail about our political, social, and economic reasons for rejecting this bill when it referred to a relevant portfolio or standing committee. We call on all fellow members of Parliament and the people of South Africa to reject it with the contempt it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now recognize the Honorable Malema, who will reply to this first reading debate. The Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks to fellow members of Parliament. We really do not think that there's anything worth responding to, except the fact that the problem with predetermined inputs, when there's a debate of this nature, you even come to advance an argument that was never put on the table. There is any differences ideologically on the relocation of Parliament. Our emphasis is on the accessibility of Parliament and making Parliament work. And therefore, to say members of Parliament will be coming from all over the country still to Pretoria as if it's a legitimate argument to be advanced, is neither here nor there, because members of parliament coming all over from the country into Pretoria or Tshwane will be much more easier and accessible than it is now with regard to Cape Town. Now, the argument which everybody seems to be advancing, that there are more important issues that are pressing in our country and that the money can be used effectively to improve on those issues than to relocate parliament. It's a disingenuous argument, because all of those issues that are happening in our country, they are as a result of a dysfunctional democracy. Once parliament is not accessible to the people, politicians do as they wish. That's why someone will come here and say anti-majoritarian, because he wants to use majoritarian to conceal corruption, to conceal holding the executive accountable, to conceal people's driven parliament that allows ordinary people who can come into committees, who can come into the full sitting, who can participate fully in any of the process of parliament, and with people looking at us and seeing us without anyone going in between. We will be conscious of the fact that we need to do the right thing, because indeed people are watching. It is only the corrupt, it is only those who are loyal to apartheid and colonial pact who will be offended by a call to make parliament be accessible to the people. The fact that we've got challenges as a country should not mean we must never intensify and invest more in making sure that our democracy works. Our democracy, and a working democracy, a people-centered democracy, will be able to resolve some of these many other challenges we are confronted with. I mean, products like the last speaker, if we were to get people to participate in parliament and they are conscious of what is really happening in parliament, because they've got unlimited access to that parliament, such characters will not even make it to parliament. They know that a parliament that exposes them to people will actually be a disadvantage to the rod that constitute this parliament that hides behind majoritarian, to hide incompetency, to hide maladministration, to hide favoritism, to hide the corruption that has engulfed our country and the executive. So, Chair, we really don't think that a genuine argument has been put forward, and we want to commit that even if they can all come together and conspire against the people-centered and people-driven parliament, as long as the EFF is here, you can be rest assured that will dismantle the apartheid colonial pact and will dismantle corruption and will take this parliament into the right hands of our people, so that they too feel that indeed they make the laws that affect their own lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, in terms of the rules, while no decision has been taken on this bill at this stage, the bill is regarded as having been read a first time. That concludes the debate and the business of this virtual mini-plenary session, and the mini-plenary will now rise. Thank you.
Yeah.